That is one of my, thanks, Ed. This is one of my favorites and a perfect introduction, perfectly chosen. Thank you for that. So I'm going to get on with it. And thank you very much, Red Wheelbarrow, for having me here tonight. It's a long awaited thing to happen in my life, and I'm very glad to be here. So the first section I'd like to start with is about discovery in the process of making art. And I struggle with routine quite a lot. So this affects productivity and, it makes it difficult to bring any one thing to fruition at a time. The problem is I find routine quite stifling. I'm kind of addicted to freewheeling and the surprises that come with the allowing crazy stuff to happen in the midst of some chaos and the surprise of not having the right thing to hand and finding something else to do it with. And so this section is about that, and it's also about this other voice, which is about wanting to make a beautiful contribution, wanting to create something that I guess I could call some form of legacy, but more a thank you, really a feeling of leaving something that says thank you for this wonderful existence, this wonderful experience, this messy mess in creativity. And I don't think of that when I'm making, but there is that voice as well. And of course, poetry really helps with that. It helps me to follow a thread of through that chaos and to bring the pieces together. And over the last 10 years, that has been my mainstay, through everything that I've been doing is the poems have helped me to grow into this process. And the other thing that helps me enormously is nature, which is a very necessary grounding force in the midst of my random freewheeling. So here we go. This is called Discovery. For a while, I must leave this road, slip down the rocky bank into the shadow of the bridge. I must enter the river. My feet must look for anchor to rock, trough, peak, slip like a diver in a bell, trusting the given oxygen. It is there that I saw the turtle at the bottom of a silvered pool. I knew that it was not of this place. Like me, learning the new landscape, becoming nimble as the heron, hardy as the lobster, dodging the tumbling stones and taming the undertow. And here we have impatience, which is very relevant. Down the hole, this poem with me like a snake after a rabbit. No, it's quite dark. We seem to be alone in this thin skin, armless, legless, a round, dumb head, long body inching forward, backward. See there the dark furrow in the sand, and every now and then little bits of skin. Ah, I see now what we were doing. It's the rabbit's foot we were after. I understand. A snake could take 35 long years to grow, but this poem ends here. Gratification. A dark line draws down the rock to form a drop which gathers on a hanging tip, and there it holds a sunbeam. I could wait and watch to see if the drop will stay and grow to hold a moonbeam too, but I am impatient and thirsty. This one is kintsugi for the dreams. Kintsugi being the wonderful Japanese art of joining broken pottery with gold. And thus the broken thing becomes even more beautiful and tells a story, tells a new story. And this is also inspired by Juan Ramon Jimenez, who I adore. There appeared the pieces of my dreams. I can describe them clearly now. to the self who sometimes stumbles, self-pitying while awake, to the self who can be calm and silent while I shout. I would gather these pieces and fit them together to form new vessels for the self who tears her feet on sharp stones and yet is gentle when I hate. I would seat the pieces between a golden joinery, binding them to new hopes, that I may recognize the self who walked where I dared not, that those new vessels be evidence of all the selves who still stand here when I am gone. The making. When the bell must be rung, when the silent song must finally be sung, its presence sits as solidly as a granite block. I wish it would forget me, but it has run amok. I press the words in search of diamonds, but stones form in my blood. It leaves me without purchase, slipping in the mud. They say you must continue to form this making stew in case the thing that you are seeking is also seeking you. The fifth dimension. To make in clay is to feel along the outline of a fourth dimension. The certainty of the third releases its clutch. The octopus can swim with many arms hard and up a spiral tide. But like the porpoise, that sleek surfing pro, I enjoy the downward ride. Legacies. To cut a stone, to study its form and color, the figures in ochre and emerald, once fluid magmas fused into molten embrace, to touch the tool marks where it was separated from its ancient bed. This mighty rock, once capable of shifting continents, is lying here, exanimate at our mercy. When we feed it to the saw's teeth and its dust lines the creases on our faces, does the mountain feel it? If its destiny is to lie forever idle on a street, under the feet of travelers, will we remember it? The violin maker. Gasparo da Salo's marble bust tops a column on the shore of Lake Garda. A dark cypress guards his back. His face and posture are bird-like. Gasparo looks down his fine features. Alabaster fingers touch the plates and ribs of a violin. As he holds it against his chest, the instrument is split open as if peeled and waiting for new resonance. We wonder, will Gasparo open his chest to put the violin in it? Or is he opening the violin to place his own heart there? The water and the wind. Let's go to the river, to breathe among her white boulders, to float on our backs between root and reed, to let the water comb through our knots, to let the jeweled kingfisher pierce our doubts, to let the mirrored fish distract our critics, to let the pond skaters draw circles on our frowns, to let the water beetle dive away our uneasiness, to let the river cleanse us and scent us with wild mint until we become more and more water, rock, and fish. Let only our daydreaming remain. Let us decipher the curved marks where an otter left a rock for the water. Relax, love. The water will swim the fish. The air will fly the bird. So um, here is a section about um, and my nomadic existence. By the age of 30, I had moved my life about 36 times. And many of these moves happened in childhood and often in very difficult circumstances, including scarcity. And what that did for me was, and I guess for anyone who experiences that, is it builds a lot of resilience, it builds confidence, and it builds a great ability to bullshit one's way out of trouble. Um, but the flip side of that is it gives you, there's a difficulty to focus, and there's an uneasiness in committing to any one thing or staying in any one place for any amount of time. And so and moving around like that, one's family tends to scatter. And so I guess there's equal parts of uneasiness and longing when it comes to home and a sort of a wandered family. Okay, so things that are thrown away. Will you go with me to find the graveyards where our discarded selves lie? I would like us to stand there beside them, call their names one by one, call them back to life and ask them to fill us with their stories. Will you stand with me and listen until they walk with us again? Ah, fires kindle best when logs are leaning in, embers facing, spaces in between. How reassuring those first warm flames were, the dance as they became the fire together. Our branches are so distant now. We have no hearth on which to kindle again before the last coal is out. 16. The day I decided to leave home, I took my kite out onto a cold hill where cypresses stood dark and without judgment, where poppies shed their scarlet garments onto the dust without shame. My intention would be delivered to the sky. The knowing wind would cut my palm with its clean, tight string and bear up my message in blood-red dashes to be witnessed by the quiet, open sky. Smoke from the ginger jar is a confessional one. I learned to smoke at 17. I smoked like maturity depended on it. I smoked to feel. I smoked to be like my sister. I smoked to be taken seriously. I smoked to be something other than vulnerable. At first, I hid it well, but when at last I left home, I smoked openly, carefreely, powerfully, like I'd proved something. I smoked to get hoarse, savvy, sexy, like the Italian girls. But smoke has always looked thin and fake on me. My voice grew no deeper. And now my family are scattered or dead and have made their ashes. So tonight I smoke a roll up of herbs from a garden dried long, long ago, stored in a ginger jar, the last relic of Grandmama. My ashtray is its broken lid. The beetle. Still they sleep, 6 cold feet. Mother dreams of foraging for pine cones. The beetle, armored blue, does not retreat, marches on in dogged search of meat. Sister dreams of searching under stones. Still they sleep, 6 cold feet. When morning warms the musty sheet, softens steely shadow tones, the beetle, armored blue, does not retreat, marches on in dogged search of meat. The child would pick the marrow from its bones. Still they sleep, 6 cold feet. Wonder must be hunger's cheat and drown out all the other moans. The beetle, armored blue, does not retreat. The child must reconcile and compete to survive this unraveling. Yet they sleep with cold feet. The beetle, armored blue, does not retreat. mother and a daughter. In that last photograph of us, our faces are bright as we enjoy the intimacy of a country path teeming with spring life. We are studying the structure of a Tuscan salsify. I think she admired the giant dandelion seeds, starting life so tightly bonded, seeming so prepared for the moment when the slightest breath would untether them to take flight from their closeness and into the world. Oh, long section. Our canyon. I was there, after all, in our canyon, when its rivers flowed with our hope, and boulders sounded with the rage of our arguments, when our debris jammed up mid-river, causing flood. This place must find new structure now. Our secrets no longer live in the high walls. Our river has run out to a trace. As I stand in the dry hollow of your leaving, I remember how you clung to beauty, asking how you could capture it. But I ask that you let beauty be now, in this empty bed of the last flood. I am here after all in our canyon. Lost bonding. Distance grew quietly in the farmhouse corridors, empty of fathers and brothers at war. Distance was inhabited by the child quietly waiting. Distance was finally embodied when the rains returned and they did not. That distance is now lived across countries and continents, and only ever closed by strangers. Nomad. A turtle on its back, a crack in its plate, the exposed heart a compass. Set for sanctuary, promises whisper across every ocean, and all the while it only wills that the currents carry it home. So after that slightly heavier atmosphere, um, some love poems who I don't think they need much introduction. All I can say is that a long-term relationship is both the most challenging and rewarding experience I've ever had. And when I understood that the relationship was a metaphor and a mirror, things became a lot easier and clearer. After the argument, the storm has left. Slow raindrops linger on the window pane. Each one now contains a small sun. Let's stay close like this and watch them in the warmth until our own gentleness returns. This is called Res severa verum gaudium, which is Latin for true joy is a serious thing. Yesterday we laughed, our arms wide open, bright flags marking our affection. Today there are some complaints, some labeled in strong ink. Our arms are crossed in misunderstanding, and my eyes roll frequently. Tonight, as I sit here at our table, touching the loathsome bills and receipts and lists, the chaff of our life in this place, my two hands are suddenly full of the weight of our contrasts. And as I look at them, I realize that what they also hold is my expanding love for you. Two, the kitchen sink, on the sill a water dish for the wagtail and a sun-filled parsley pot. Harsh thoughts arise without permission, and so a translucent petrol-colored sphere from the soap bottle drifts up to meet my frown. Two plates, two knives, two forks, two cups, and two magnificent old hands, open, palms up. This one's called It's Okay, Alice. This mirror smiles at me if I smile first. Same goes for showing it the finger. It points out that my jumper is on back to front. So I write a note. When I put it to its glass, the mirror's not so clever. While it knows what's at my back, the room, the windows, and my face, the mirror only knows the blank side of the paper, while I can read, "You're okay, Alice." Okay, how are we doing for time, Ed? Okay, good, good. So a little section about um, losses, I guess, and grace. And I noticed that I've had the privilege of being near to a few people as they've been on their way out of this world. And it's incredible how grace is just never far away. And I I'm always astounded by that. You know, it's in the middle of really horrible, dark situations that, and my attitude is often terrible in the face of that. But I notice that somewhere something has changed, something was understood, something was assimilated. And so these about are in gratitude to those situations. This is called the lizard. Where the bones lie, the grasses have grown strong. Their roots reach down to touch her shape, as I am not able. Stones shield her eternal bed from the sun, holding lasting vigil there, as I am not able. Where the bones lie, a lizard stalks a spider in its silk with perfectly focused attention, as I am not able. The clay now holds the sweet frame in its hands. It will tend to the bones as well, as I am not able. The lizard catches the spider, and only a discarded leg is left, and I here beside it. The lizard blinks and licks its lips at this life. All I can do is blink with it. After loss. Who is this whose hollow skin drifts over the storm's dark water? Who is this who would collide with something, if only to feel solid again? Who is this who wills with all of her flesh to be washed ashore, even one piece at a time? Um, it's simple when you know what to look for. One day, hope was lost to the sun. It seemed it would not find its feet, slipping only into emptiness. A faint voice called it forward through the spinning fog, where at last it landed on the shore of its own being to stand upright on the sand. The voice called out again, clearly enough to lift the fog away, and there, on the empty beach, in the ebb, was a small shining seed, bearing a single sprout and two bold leaves open in the sunlight. Prayer for a dark day. May this darkness be a velvet womb, bearing light which I cannot see yet, wisdom which makes no sense yet, and blessings I do not know yet. May I see that it is me being born. May I know that the light will find me again. And sometimes I often find that the sacred places, there are many, for me mostly in natural places, in nature, close to the creatures. But every now and again, there is a place that is a building that is important to many people, and this is an attempt to describe what happened in one such place. The chapel on Lake Garda. Santa Anna della Rocca di Sirmione, tucked inside her city gate. When I stepped inside the chapel, it seemed as if I had stepped into my own heart, and into the heart of my mother, and into my mother's mother's heart. into the heart that held my father and into my father's father's heart, into the heart that warmed the places where they loved, and beyond that, into the hearts of all those who want love, and into all the hearts of all the ravaged places that all look for a sanctuary like this with a jasmined arch. When is a promise? For many days I sat with an elderly friend while she untethered from this place, a quiet witness to the shallow breath behind the hollow cheeks, the blue vellum of skin on the bone of the brow, the weeping man on the opposite bed. His humming travelled through the strange waiting room, causing its captives to sob and a nurse to scold them. Something made me go to him. He softened with my hello, his eyes two small openings of an ancient weathered cave. Would you sing us that song? At the end of a long, drawn breath, there came a soothing Irish voice, falling water on our open will. It was a song about a daughter, or a love perhaps, a plea to find them again. He took my hands, pulled me closer to his face. He said, "Promise me." I felt like a small bird suspended in the eye of a storm. Sometimes oaths must be sworn without comprehension. So, for peace and for death and for my own inadequacy in front of them, I promised. The armadillos. These friends will sit close and listen until you speak of losses. Then they coil up and become a stone. You can all hear me okay, I guess. Yeah, good. Okay, so a bit lighter would be good, I feel. So I adore funny poems and really love. I'm delighted when I find a clever, funny poem. I'm not a master at writing those for sure, but it's great fun to attempt to create them, and great fun to find new ones. I'll begin with a poem. It was. I'm a great fan of daydreaming. This is another obstacle to my productivity, but great things happen when you when daydreaming. There are revelations that land and all sorts of other things. And the other day, when I was on Instagram, I suddenly realized that our scrolling through social media is a kind of a daydreaming, although it's terrifying because it's sort of these things that are being fed from outside. So it's equally terrifying and can be totally delightful. And this poem landed in a 60-second interval when I thought, what would happen if I just recorded everything that came through this particular thread that was quite funny. So here we are. 60 seconds. While we live, so on Instagram, a snail seems to enjoy a shower. A man's silhouette on a sidewalk suddenly animates and begins to dance. An actor gives voice to an animated penguin. John Lennon speaks of maniacs. An a cappella group sings 3 seconds of "There is a quiet place" and is gone. A tree is felled by a laser beam. John Cleese speaks of tolerating discomfort. A camera mounted on a chicken's head films with no shake at all. An artist draws ambidextrously, and Tom Waits reads Charles Bukowski's The Laughing Heart. Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. Here's a really silly one. Okay, I nearly didn't include it, but here we are. Ode to soft-boiled egg. A golden reward when at its best, a punishment of sulphur for the rest. And when left to its own pursuit, a hen or cock, perhaps to fruit. Warm delight to crack and dip, most pleasing oval in a cup, and of course, please have fond thoughts for the dear hen who gave it up. So this is called Time of the Serious Birder, which comes out of an experience that was quite funny that happened in Kent, actually. The serious birder's abilities were astonishing. They could spot the tiniest, rarest bird where I could see none. Such meticulous attention. When I saw a bird and told them what I thought it was, they looked through their binoculars, which were better than mine, of course, and corrected me immediately. I missed the obvious stripe, the evident collar. The serious birder is always candid. I practiced my best bird call for our next outing, but they looked at me quite blankly, saying that they had absolutely no idea what that might be. The serious birder is always eager to educate. They suggested which bird book to buy, and when I did, they pointed out that their edition was, of course, better. You can see for yourself right here in the field. After more dedicated study, I said the Latin name of my latest discovery. They gave me that look a schoolteacher gives when an unruly student has correctly completed a sum at the blackboard for the first time. The serious birders are still happy in their work, but sorry, I cannot pass you their number. I deleted it. Kermit, a traveling musician from Germany, once told me he could teach anyone to sing in an overtone. You know, those Mongolian singers that seem to impossibly produce two notes at once. He saw that I might be up for it. And so he gave his instruction. You sit comfortably, relax, put the tip of your tongue to the front of your palate, behind the teeth, form a gentle O with your mouth, and then, you know that green frog? The one made of felt? Yes. You call him? Yes. Krrr. Tried and tested recipe against chaos. Run outside. Find a pasture full of cows. Run into their midst. Push that clean, beg your pardon, I'll start that one again. Run outside and find a pasture full of cows and run into their midst. Remove a boot and sock. Push that clean bare foot into the freshest warm pat you can find. As the warm oozes up between the toes, the world will become suddenly quite simple again, as your focus is now on the fouled foot and how to return it to the sock and boot. Luck. Statistics put the finding of four-leaf clovers at 1 in 10,000. In Irish folklore, finders are blessed with fortune and good favor. I found my first on my 10th birthday, 2 the next day, 5 the day after that. I found 300 last spring. I think I may have tipped the statistics, but I still seem to be out of luck. So this last section is about the creatures, and the creatures are one of the greatest joys in my life. When I was a child, I didn't suffer from them. I enjoyed sudden outbursts of uncontrollable joy and happiness, and they were quite sort of generally quite loud and quite explosive. And people tend to be quite disconcerted by that when it happens, and still are, because I still do this. I still suffer from this. But the creatures seem to always be my greatest ally, especially the dogs. You know, when you have an outburst like that, the dogs just go, yes, let's go. I'm ready. Let's go for it. And so wonderful, wonderful gift to have had so many encounters with so many wonderful creatures. And the other thing I adore about them is their ability to bring us into presence. And whether it's a tree, an insect, a fish, a bird, just that the presence is their dimension. And yeah, it just brings you there. If you sit there a moment, it just brings you there. I really need that in my life. And of course, with the love of the creatures comes a great love of water, which makes it all possible. And along with that comes a love of rain and clouds and storms. And so here's some gratitude for those and some of the very wonderful creatures I've had the pleasure to spend time with. Cosmic teacup. Remnants of an ancient water have been found on the moon, in comets and at Mercury's poles, in the remains of Mars's melts on Jupiter's Europa. 3 atoms which once trickled down a pterodactyl's feather, filtered through rock to feed a spring, ushered a desert into bloom, passed upward through trunk and stem and leaf, dewed atop a mushroom cap, evaporated into bright atmosphere to ride the wind and fall again, to run as river out to sea through plankton, kelp, and whale. 3 atoms right here on this table, in this teacup. The owl. Over limestone and flint the bare feet go, know the way of the warm night. She waits for the hollow call to come, the shape of him against the stars, hand held out for talons to land, his gentle weight and grip. He folds his wings, shakes, and is still. He is why she knows the night. He is why she ventures out. He is the reason she now belongs with her whole being to this place. Jacaranda. Beloved jacaranda, the pathways of its branches so high above distress. The violet flowers on fingertips, each a treasured wish. The 8-year-old self still found there, turning the flat seed pods over in her palm like stranded fish. Alone in a jar. The blue dragon is a small, shellless gastropod, also known as a dragon slug, blue angel, or sea swallow. Beautiful and rare, it travels upside down on the ocean's surface, led by wind and current. Predator of deadly man of war and venomous siphonophore, its only enemies are the loggerhead turtle and Homo sapiens. This 5-year-old Homo sapiens found one such blue dragon washed up on a beach on a Sunday morning. Fascinated by the pretty creature, it took it home to die alone in a jar. Whew. Love letter to cumulonimbus. I would cross any ground to watch you rise on your sky table, to move toward you as you drum, to count the beats until lightning, to stand naked as you rage, to breathe in your laden breath, to lean in as you shift your flanks, to watch as they darken, to be beneath you when you break. So this one is called millipede, and apparently the millipede has the longest heart of any animal in that its heart is as long as its body. And it was also one of the first creatures to leave the water and come onto land. And the African name for the millipede is shongololo. Shongololo. When the millipede left those Silurian waters to crawl out onto hostile earth, maybe it was the long heart's wish to discover a new geography. Maybe it knew its armor-plated heart could withstand these difficult millennia. making passage to this time and place where it now lies vulnerably at my feet in a spiral self-embrace and makes the shape of a galaxy. The man named Murder. Some ancient olive trees grow in a barren plot near our home. They are owned by the man named Murder. Despite his name, he is always smiling. He smiles as he tills his plot to dust. He smiles as he pumps the poison around the tightly pruned trees. A pair of ancient beauties once stood by the road. The leathery leaved boughs arched to gently touch one another, and a swarm of wild bees often rested there. One Saturday, on our way home, we saw him there in the road beside his tractor, chainsaw still growling in his hand, showing us the newly gaping gap and clearly delighted. Now my tractor can pass. And so we are left with the two felled corpses, a terrible recurring nausea, and the upside down arch of the man named Murder's smile. The signatures. The atoms of the waters of the world touch and move through everything, connect, revive, restore in signatures of silver, gold, and green. We stand here below the clouds, tears roll down our cheeks, signatures of our own in that same water, which could be older than the sun. Okay, so I seem to have galloped a little bit, Ed. But there we are. So I'm just going to check that I didn't skip. No, I did not. But I definitely galloped a little. So what's that?
No, keep going.
Okay. So I am going to close with another sort of semi-silly, well, it is silly. It's a sort of a song and kind of sums up where we've been a little bit. This is called The Highway. I want to make it, so I fake it some, and some I walk away and take it, and sometimes I just break it. I look for truth among the rust, find bits of my broken promises. I want to make it, so I fake it some. I bang my fists at doors to trust. They have no lock, but sometimes I break it. These wings have shed most of their dust. I don't want to fly away. I want to make it, so I'll fake it some. No strings attached to this half thing, which has the shape of admiration. Sometimes I just break it. If the last is to be the best, if I want to make it, I want to make it, so I'll fake it some. But sometimes I'm just going to have to break it. There we are.
Thank you, Georgia. Could we please unmute and give Georgia a round of appreciation, applause?
I realized I said I'd gallop, but in fact, I've gone a little overtime, Ed.
As Jacques often says, our clocks just don't work. So,
okay.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah.
My watch is perennially broken.
Oh, good.
Are you okay with people asking questions, Georgia?
Sure.
Okay. I could start us off, but is there anyone who has a question for Georgia or a comment, an observation, anything you'd like to? Hi. Liesl, hi.
I was just saying hi to George. I haven't seen her in a while.
All good. Okay, Jacques, you have a question?
Oh, Georgia, there's so much that I want to say. There's so much that I want to comment on, and I'm going to forget 90% of it. But I love this paradox of things being whole and broken at the same time, and sort of gathering more integrity as they break more. And I love this paradox of you have to work so hard. We have to work so hard to make the art. We have to work so hard on ourselves, and at the same time, it works best when we don't put in so much effort. When the air flies the bird and the water swims the fish. I don't know. I'm not giving. I feel as if that's a statement rather than a question. Do you want to say something about that? About that?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely. And the yeah, for me certainly that's true. You know, the magic happens when it's fun and when it's not hard work, and when I haven't overthought it or planned too much or put too many obstacles in my own way. You know, it's and that's the difficulty, because at some point the structure needs to come, and the kind of I'm getting better at it. I am getting there.
Mm.
There is somewhere there's a way. Somewhere there's, you know, there are ways of doing it, but I think it is, yeah, it is a challenge. And some of the most original and exciting things that I've found have always happened when there isn't there isn't an idea about something to do or something to put out there or a definitive purpose for it. You know, it's just that freedom, just that absolute freedom to move and explore.
Be
Does that
present.
answer?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I love that poem where you sitting in the presence of creatures, and they're more present than, you know, they can yawn, or they can move, or they can do whatever they do in ways that you're unable to. So, like, sitting with that discomfort, that, you know, you would like to be more present even than you are. Yeah, no, it's lovely. Yeah, you have answered it.
Thank you, Jacques.
It's great to hear you read.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacques. I see we have a comment in the chat. I'm just trying to find it. I don't know if everyone can see this, but Liz has commented, Liz True, I love your sense of wonder and, yes, gratitude, musical and imaginative. So I don't know if you see that, Georgia.
Oh, I do. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed them very much. You do love water. Have you lived near
Yes.
water, or do you seek water, or
Yes.
it means a lot to you?
Yes. Yes. It really does. I was born in Zimbabwe, and very, very, very much very far away from water. But I definitely am slightly obsessed with it. Yes.
Yeah. Great poems, really good.
Thank you
The
so
wind and the
much.
water, especially. The wind, is it the wind and the water? Yes.
The water, yes. Thank you so much.
Devika, I'm sorry. In my attempt to relay what was in the chat, I don't know if you still would like to ask a question, but please feel free. You're muted at the moment.
Right. Sorry, no, not a problem at all. Georgia, thanks so much. I really enjoyed your poems. And like Jacques, I had, there were so many thoughts as you were reading them, but your response to Jacques' comment about the sort of freedom, and then I can't exactly recall how you put it, but that sense that you spoke of sort of freely creating is, I think, really well captured in your poem. So that comes through. And I think one of the sort of prevailing responses, I suppose, that I had to your poetry as you were reading was kind of the inverse of that Latin phrase that's the title of one of your poems. That what was it that in true
Rest.
joy, seriousness,
Is
and I thought it's actually the reverse of that comes through in so many of your poems. That really serious phenomena are in fact moments of joy and even irreverence. For example, one of the early poems about the drop of water hanging on the edge of a rock, which then ends with but I'm impatient and thirsty, and I felt that truly captured that sense of like a really profound, serious moment, and then you sort of take it to this joyful, playful place, and I really enjoyed that sense of play and fun in a lot of your poems. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Deepika. Thank you for being here. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful feedback. Thank you so much. Lovely. Yeah, I had another I actually didn't get who asked me the question about the water. I couldn't see who was talking at the time. So sorry I didn't answer properly. But the water,
Sorry.
who was it?
Was it me?
Yes. Yes. Hi, Liz. Oh, it was you. Okay.
Hi.
Okay.
The water and the wind. I've got it
Yes,
now.
yes. Yes. So
Beautiful.
I think the water is an obsession because it feeds the creatures and the trees and keeps everything green. And
Yes.
I think that's where it comes from. Yes. It just
You can't
is.
live-
It's that the feeling of drought for me is a real, I get quite panicked at the idea of drought. Anyway, I just thought I'd add that in there. Thank you. Thank you, Liz.
Here we have a question from Jude Adams.
Marg. Hi, this is Jude. This is Marg. But I'm really, I loved it, George. I think it was really interesting, and each one is such a little beautifully formed vignette, really, that it was just like a delight. It was like this sort of box of chocolates somehow. Actually, which one shall I engage with, or whatever? Have you ever thought of, because I was also struck by the water and the nature, have you ever thought of putting them together in a kind of longer story, to create like a longer narrative? Because you also, even in those little, even in the relatively short ones, you tell it's a very strong narrative, even in the short ones. But I just wondered whether you'd ever considered that.
I think the answer is that somewhere I've considered starting to put them together. This is actually the first time I've strung them together in any way,
Right.
in any form. This is a sort of a broad sweep over many different things. But I think that's a fabulous idea, Marg. And I did think that I could do something with, put them together and maybe illustrate them or something. I would love that. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
And thank you for that about those particular poems with the water. I think that would be really, really lovely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Were you going to say something else, Marg? Did I interrupt? Okay. And thank you for being here. It's wonderful.
George, I had like many people have already said, I had lots of thoughts running through my head as you were reading, and I was struck by many things. The probing quality of the poems. There's definitely that and the courage and the honesty in many of the poems, and just the range of what you read. Particularly enjoyed the humorous poems, and the nature poems. There's a curiosity about the world in your work, and things are really closely observed. Even in that first poem about things you observe on Instagram. So yeah, if I have a question, it's to do with some of the shorter things, and they're almost like miniature parables. And yeah, like the armadillos, I think was one of those. Is there anything you want to say about those, or influences perhaps, things that inspire you?
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for that question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that very, very short clip came from, but it was one of the very few poems that came out and was just as it was, from the beginning. I didn't touch it after that. And there were many, I find I sometimes get into an editing paralysis where I just go, come on, if it's going to take this long, if you're going to have to go over it so many times, maybe just chuck it away. Maybe it's just time to call it. And with Jacques' help, I've sort of calmed down around that and just gone, okay, just let it be, just put it one side, come back and whatever. But when they come out like that, when they come out and they're just fully formed and short, who knows, Ed, where it comes from. I mean, I love concise, short poems that come straight to a point, that are deep and that hit the spot. Unfortunately, I save them. I have a folder where I save all these wonderful things that I find, and I have the most terrible memory for names and even titles of poems. But I always remember the feeling that I have from a poem. I always remember the moment that I heard it for the first time and it really hit home. And I think, that one somewhere, I know it's a slightly light-hearted, it is. But the first time I read any of Rumi's poems, I've sort of found myself going, wow, concise, deep, short. Some of them are long, but the short ones are really beautifully formed, and so maybe that was an inspiration. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any others there. Although I just think that I like poems that have grit. I like poems that when I'm reading other poets, I love poems that really speak to the deeper parts, the more unconscious parts of our being. I don't know if that answers your question, Ed.
Thank you.
Does that answer?
Thank you. Yes. No. I also, just one last thing. I loved Kintsugi for the Dreams. I think that poem it's just such a fantastic poem, and it illuminates sort of what many of the other poems for me, being fragments, and comes back to, I guess, what Jacques was saying earlier. And then absolutely, yes, the musicality in the structure. From where I'm listening, you're definitely getting it right. Wow, that last poem is just one example of that.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Hey.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all of your encouragement, really. You have been there just rooting. I really felt your encouragement. So thank you so much for that. Much appreciated.
Very welcome. I see their comments in the chat as well. I don't know if you can see those. There's a comment from Victoria Dickinson. Should I just read that, or can you?
I can see. Oh, how lovely. Thank you so much, Vic, honestly. And thank you, Jude. Lovely, lovely, lovely comments. In fact, I need to screenshot before they all disappear.
Thank you, Georgia.
Thank you
really
for being, and
yeah, really stunning. I love it.
Thank you so much for being here. And I had a sort of a slight panic where I thought I'd gone too quickly, and then I realized that actually we'd gone over time. So thank you for bearing with that as well.
More, please.
Thanks for your support.
My pleasure.
Well, if there aren't any further questions, can we just give Georgia one last round of appreciation?
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So
Yay, thank
usually
you
what
all.
happens is we have a, sorry.
No, carry on. I was saying thank you. I was just saying thank you.
Good, all good. I'm just looking for the place to pause the recording. I found it. Okay. We have a 5-minute break now. And yeah, then after that, there's an open mic.